Which is one of the most important verbs in the English language? That's right, it's the verb to be. And which is one of the most used verbs in the English language? Yep, it's the verb to be too. And which is one of the most irregular and trickiest verbs in the English language? Surprise, surprise, it's the verb to be. Please make sure you're not making the following 10 mistakes when using it. Hi there, this is James from Fixienglish and welcome to another one of our top 10 video series. As you probably know, verbs play a very important role in communication. And more specifically, the verb to be is one of the most used and most irregular verbs in the English language. It can be used to describe something or someone, and we can also use it to express different things according to the context. As we mentioned before, native Spanish speakers tend to struggle with the verb to be when they're trying to express certain ideas the same way they would in their own language. So, here goes our top 10 list on the most common mistakes using the verb to be. At number 10, we have the use of the verb to be to express existence. Now, in Spanish, we would actually use the impersonal form I to do this. But in English, we use the word there plus the verb to be. The common mistake with this is that normally in Spanish you would use the same form for both singular and plural. But in English, we actually use two different forms. We have there is for singular, and we have there are for plural. So what could be some practical examples to express existence in English? Well, for instance, you could say, there is an apple in the fridge. In the plural form, you would say, there are apples on the table. But you would never say, there is apples on the table, because that is the singular form. At number 9, we have the use of the verb to be to express birth. Now, in Spanish, we have a specific verb to do this, which is the verb nacer. But in English, we are not able to do that in the same way, and we actually use the verb to be plus the past participle of the verb bear, which is the word born. The equivalent in Spanish would be something like ser nacido. Now, the most common mistake is trying to use the participle form born in the same way as we would use the verb nacer. But that isn't possible, I'm afraid. So what could be some practical ways to express birth in English? Well, for instance, you could say, I was born in July, using the past form of the verb to be, but you would never say, I born or borned with ed in July. Another example could be, my daughter will be born in October, using the future form of the verb to be, but you would never say, my daughter will born in October. Lastly, you could say, no one is born with a racist heart, but you would never say, no one born with a racist heart. At number 8, we have the use of the verb to be to express measurements. This is rather a long word. Now, what is the common problem with native Spanish speakers? Well, actually, we have in Spanish a verb which is medir to express this. But in English, we would have to use the verb to be plus the number or the figure we're expressing plus the adjective according to what we're wanting to express. If it's height, if it's length. The most common mistake in this case is that we try to use the verb medir as we would use the verb measure. But I'm afraid this isn't possible. So what could be some practical examples using the verb to be to express measurements? Well, a few sentences would be the following. If we're wanting to express height, we have to establish a difference between tall and high. These two adjectives have different uses. If you remember, tall is used for people, buildings and things that grow, and high is used for other nouns or for the rest of the nouns. For instance, here's a question. How tall are you? Using the adjective tall. The answer in English would be I'm 2 meters tall, using the verb to be. You would never express this using the verb measure. I measure 2 meters. This would be wrong. Another question would be how high is Mount Everest? Using the adjective high. In the answer, we use the verb to be again. I believe it's 8,848 meters high. We would never say it measures 8,848 meters. However, if we're wanting to express length, we would use the adjective long. A question could be, how long is the rope? And the answer would be, it's 5 meters long. As you can see, we're using the verb to be in both sentences. It would never sound natural in English to express, it measures 5 meters. At number 7, we have the use of the verb to be to express punctuality. Now, in Spanish, we would use the verb llegar followed by the adjectives tarde or pronto, depending on how punctual you are. And in English, we could do this in two ways. We could express it with the verb arrive, or we could express it with the verb to be, both followed by the adjectives early or late. Now the problem comes when we are wanting to use these two forms in the present simple. In Spanish, we would say llego tarde. But this would be rather strange to express it in English as I arrive late. That wouldn't be correct. We would use the verb to be. I am late. This would sound much more natural in English than expressing it with the verb arrive. So what could be some practical examples to express punctuality in English? For instance, you could say, I will be late for work. This sentence could be also expressed with the verb arrive. I will arrive late for work. Both would be correct. Another example could be, he is late, but he's coming. This sentence is using the present simple of the verb to be. We wouldn't be able to express it using the verb arrive. He arrives late, but he's coming just wouldn't sound natural enough. At number 6, we have the use of the verb to be to express mental states. Now, what happens here is that in Spanish, we would actually use an idiomatic expression that uses the verb tener plus a noun. Say envy, jealousy, curiosity. But in English, what we do is we use the verb to be plus an adjective. And this is a special kind of adjective which we call a predicative adjective. What's the common mistake or the common problem when using or expressing mental states with the verb to be in English? Is that if we say, for example, in Spanish, tengo curiosidad, people generally would translate this as have or I have curiosity. But this is actually wrong because we would have to use the verb to be. We would express this saying I am or I'm curious. And as we mentioned before, this is a special kind of adjective which is actually describing the subject, not a noun, and the verb to be is acting as a linking verb. So what could be some practical ways to express mental states in English? Well, you could say, for instance, I am not afraid of spiders, which normally would be translated into Spanish as I don't have fear of spiders, but this would be wrong. As you can see, we are using the verb to be in the first sentence. Another sentence could be, they are envious of you. Normally this is expressed in Spanish as, they have envy of you. Yet again, this would be wrong. One last sentence would be, we need to be careful. We wouldn't express this saying, we need to have care. That would be wrong. At number 5, halfway up the list, we have the use of the verb to be to express physical conditions. Now, what is happening here is something similar to what we saw in number 6. In Spanish, we would use an idiomatic expression that uses the verb tener plus a noun, say hunger or thirst or heat. But in English, we would be using the verb to be plus an adjective. Now, what is the most common mistake when trying to express physical conditions in English? Well, if we took an example like tengo hambre in Spanish, this would be normally translated into English as I have hunger. But I'm afraid this is wrong. We would have to use the verb to be, I am, and the adjective hungry. This is once again a predicative adjective that is modifying or describing the subject, and the verb to be is acting as a linking verb. What could be some practical examples to express physical conditions in English? Well, you could say, for instance, I am hot or I am cold. But you would never say I have heat, or even less, I have hot. This would be wrong in English. Another sentence could be, they aren't thirsty. You would never say they don't have thirst. And lastly, we could say we are tired, but we wouldn't say we have tiredness. As you can see, the 3 of these sentences are using the verb to be to express physical conditions. At number 4, we have the use of the verb to be to express luck. And the same thing is happening here as we've seen in number 5 and number 6. In Spanish, we would have the idiomatic expression using the verb tener followed by a noun, in this case, luck. But in English, we would be using the verb to be followed by an adjective. Now, what is the most common mistake we found when people are trying to express luck in English? Well, taking a sentence in Spanish, for instance, tengo suerte, people would normally translate this as I have luck. But this would be wrong. We would express this in English using the verb to be and say I am lucky. Using once again a predicative adjective that is describing or modifying the subject and using the verb to be as a linking verb. So what could be some other ways to express luck in English? Well, we could say, for instance, he was lucky to find his ring. But you wouldn't say he had luck, or as we've sometimes heard, he had lucky to find his ring. That would be wrong. Another example could be, I'm not always lucky, which we would never say, I don't always have luck. That would be wrong. In third position on our top 10 list, we'd like to show you 3 expressions that are using the verb to be to express different things. The first one is when we are using the verb to be to express success. Now, the same thing as we've seen before, in Spanish we would use the verb tener followed by the noun, in this case success, and this is an idiomatic expression. But in English we would be using the verb to be followed by an adjective. Now, which is the most common mistake we found when people are wanting to express success in English? Taking the sentence tengo éxito, for instance, this would be normally expressed in English the following way: I have success. But this would be wrong. We would have to use the verb to be and the adjective successful. Yet again, a predicative adjective that is describing the subject and using the verb to be to link both parts. The second sentence we'd like to show you is when we are wanting to express that we are right or wrong. Yet again, in Spanish, we would use the idiomatic expression that uses the verb tener plus the noun. But in English, we would be using the verb to be followed by the adjective, which is a common mistake that we found when people are wanting to express to be right or wrong. Taking the sentence tengo razón, they would normally express it the following way: I have the reason, which is a literal translation but has nothing to do with how we would express it in English. We would have to use the verb to be and say I am right or I am wrong. Yet again, using an adjective that describes the subject and the verb to be to link both parts. And the third sentence we'd like to highlight is when we are using the verb to be to express hurry or rush. Now, in Spanish, yet again, we would use the idiomatic expression that combines the verb tener plus or followed by a noun. But in English, we would be using the verb to be followed by a specific expression that uses hurry or rush, which is the most common mistake we found when we are wanting to express hurry or rush in English. Taking the sentence tengo prisa, for instance, people would normally express this saying I have rush or I have hurry. But yet again, this would be wrong. We would have to say I am, using the verb to be, in a rush, or I am in a hurry. In this case, using the specific expression I am in a rush or I am in a hurry, the verb to be combined with the expression. What could be some practical examples using these three expressions in different ways? Well, for instance, you could say I would like to be successful. You would never say in English, I would like to have success. This would be wrong. Another sentence could be, he's right, we need a new house. We would never say, he has the reason we need a new house. And lastly, another example could be, I'm sorry, we are in a bit of a hurry. We would never say this saying, I'm sorry, we have a bit of a hurry. This would be wrong. In second place on our top 10 list, and one of the most common mistakes using the verb to be, is when we are wanting to express age. Now, in Spanish, yet again, we would be using the verb tener followed by the age. But in English, we would need to use the verb to be followed by the age. Now, what's the most common mistake we found when people are trying to express this in English? Taking the sentence, for instance, tengo 35 años, people would normally express this saying, I have 35 years. But this would be wrong. We would have to use the verb to be and say the following: I am 35, or I am 35 years old. Remember that we cannot say 35 years, we can say 35 or 35 years old, using the verb to be. A few more examples to express age would be the following. We could say, for instance, she's 102 years old. She's very old. We would never say in English, she has 102 years. Another example could be, how old are you, if we are asking a question? And the answer could be, for instance, I'm 20 or I'm 20 years old. But we would never say, I have 20 years. And last but not least, the number one most common mistake we found when people are using the verb to be is when they are wanting to express agreement. So what happens here? Well, in Spanish, we would use the verbal phrase that combines the verb estar plus the words de acuerdo. But in English, we could do this in two different ways. On one hand, we could use the verb agree, to agree, or the verb disagree if we want to express the opposite. But we could also use the verb to be combined with the expression in agreement or in disagreement if we want to express the opposite. So, what is the most common mistake we tend to find when people are trying to express this in English? If we take the example, estoy de acuerdo contigo, people would normally say this saying the following: I am agree with you. But this would be wrong. We would not be able to express it this way. We would either have to say, I agree with you, or we would have to use the other expression that uses the verb to be, saying, I'm in agreement with you. But we wouldn't be able to use the verb to be followed by the verb agree. What could be a few more practical ways of expressing agreement in English? For instance, we could say, I'm afraid I don't agree with you. You would never say, I'm afraid I am not agree with you. That wouldn't be correct. Another sentence could be, they are all in agreement with the new law. But we would never say, they are all agree with the new law. That would be wrong. And this puts an end to our top 10 list on the most common mistakes using the verb to be. If you like this video and found the content useful, why not hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one? And if you have any suggestions on future topics we could address, please leave us a comment below. Thanks for watching. This is James Austin from the Fixienglish team, and we hope to see you in the next series.